Welcome to What is Going Om, for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Times flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. It's pretty much accepted that UFOs and their occupants have long been visiting our world. However, the government's acknowledgement in 2017 still leaves many questions unanswered. One of the most important of which is, how can we prepare for an event that is literally beyond anything humanity has ever faced? Alan Steinfeld is an explorer of consciousness who's been hosting the weekly New Realities series on cable TV in New York City for over 30 years. His interviews with luminaries in the field of health, spirituality, and UFOs, streaming on his popular YouTube channel, have surpassed 20 million views, while millions more people worldwide have been enlightened by his media appearances, lectures, and conferences on human potential, remote viewing, and the nature of alien contact. A self-confessed UFO enthusiast and avant-garde spiritualist, Alan Steinfeld joins me today to discuss his most recent book, Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence, which features previously unpublished essays from the best and brightest researchers in the fields of UFOs, including Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, Darrell Anker, Caroline Corey, Nick Pope, Mary Rodwell, the late John Matt, and more. Alan Steinfeld, welcome.
Thank you. You know, I love your accent and the way I'm going to use that introduction because it's so good.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much. So you've been studying consciousness, exploring consciousness in this arena for more than 30 years. You MC the world's biggest UFO conference, Contact in the Desert. You've had a lifelong fascination with outer space, the stars, science fiction books, which probably isn't surprising given that you experienced your own alien abduction in 1987, the year of the harmonic convergence. So tell us about that.
Well, you know, it was the year of the harmonic convergence, and I bought a van and wanted to drive around the country seeing where did I want to spend that special moment in history. So I left New York and went through Tennessee and Texas, and I got to Sedona, met a very lovely woman in Sedona. And then we continued to travel together, and it was the summer of 87. I still wasn't sure where I wanted to spend the harmonic convergence, which was August 16th and 17th of 1987. And it was predicted to be the end by Jose Aguirre of this ninth hell that began with the invasion of Cortez in 1519. And then there were 9 52-year cycles that brought us to that moment in 1987 where everything was going to be okay, you know. And then from 87 to 2012, it was going to be 25 years of readjustment and reevaluation. Well, I don't know if that worked out, but it was a moment in history, the harmonic convergence, where the spiritual subculture really came together all over the world. There were people in Hawaii and in Sedona, and then I eventually ended up in Woodstock, New York. But there was a network of connections of like-minded people all over the world at the sacred sites. So anyway, I traveled that summer. I was traveling with this woman, Jane, and we had, what do you want to know about the abduction, or you want to know?
Oh,
about,
yes. Well, I want to know all of it.
Okay. Well, just to back up a little bit, I think I always had some kind of visitations as a child. I would see faces in the window. Maybe everyone did that. Let's just say scary dreams, not quite nightmares, feeling like I wasn't in my body. inexplicable activity. I mean, I always had to sleep with the lights on and the radio playing. Maybe a lot of people did that. But I had a sense of another level of reality. And I wasn't real. I love science fiction, like I write in my book, and it was a preparation for other ways of thinking. But when I got on this cross-country trip and was returning from the West Coast to the East Coast, there was a moment where me and my girlfriend, we had parked at a little camping spot along the side of the road, and we just passed out. We know we're driving a long time, and we woke up in the morning in the same position we fell asleep in. And who remembers that? I don't remember last night but there was something about, and I had called her like years later saying, I wrote this book about our little trip. And she goes, "Oh, you mean the night we were frozen?" Well, not really frozen cold, but frozen in suspended animation. That's what it felt like. But in a vague sort of way, it's like, went to bed, passed out, and then woke up as if no time had elapsed. And other people talk about the sense of missing time. It wasn't quite missing because we were sort of asleep and we weren't looking at the clocks, but it was a strange kind of warp, a loop in time. And I got back to New York, and my mother, who I think is very connected to the phenomena, even though she denied it, said, "Oh, you have this strange mark on the back of your leg." And there was this 4-pronged puncture mark that I thought, oh, it must be, I don't know, a spider bite or something like that. But coincidentally, I started to meet people connected to Bud Hopkins' Intruders Group. Do you know Bud Hopkins? He was one of the, I think he's the godfather of alien abductions, really. He's the one who made the most progress. So happened to meet him, coincidentally or not, asked people, "What do you think of this mark?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, that's an alien abduction." And that, it did two things simultaneously. It freaked me out. It's like, oh my God, what happened? And then it made me obsessed. Like, what happened? So that's usually kind of a split. In trauma, there's this repulsive attraction. Like you don't want to go there, and you want to go there, and that is an aspect of just normal traumas, and it's kind of a traumatic moment to meet these other beings, if that's what they are, from other places, other dimensions, because we don't have any framework to put such beings and events in. I mean, how can someone take you out of this time, space, dimension, do whatever they do, and bring you back? That's not conceivable in our understanding of reality. So that's one level of trauma, just being, not, I was in a van, but some people lock their doors, the windows are shut, they're falling asleep, and suddenly there's a figure at the front of their bed. And just that is traumatic. So the trauma of contact for some people, other people, it's like, bliss and angels. But for me and a lot of people I know, like Whitley Strieber, who wrote a chapter in the book, there's this very, what John Mack called ontological shock. The nature, ontology is the nature of reality. And when the nature of what we think reality is sort of violated, it upsets everything. That's the shock. It's like, oh, the reality is more solid than the ground beneath your feet. And when that's upset, yeah.
Puts everything into question. Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever in your lifetime since then retrieved any more information about that?
Well, I did years later, because I didn't think I was ready for it. But years later, I did have a regression. And it was by a hypnotherapist who wasn't that expert in the field of alien contact. So it didn't go far enough for me, but it did get me to see, oh, there are these beings there, and they kind of floated me out of this car, van, and they seem much friendlier than I had thought. You know, people think of ETs as scary, and we have this picture of like they're going to invade the planet. I don't think they're going to invade. I think if they wanted to do that, they would have done that a long time ago. I actually think they're here to help us on a consciousness level awaken to a greater perception of reality.
Yeah,
And
and that's the conclusion of many of your contributors to the book as well. So, you know, making contact, I mean, it does present multiple perspectives, and we can no longer deny this. And it also answers a lot of questions which remain in the wake of the Pentagon's recent disclosure. What inspired you to produce this book now? Was it the government's lack of transparency?
It was partly that, and partly because since I was obsessed with the phenomena since 1987, I went to a publisher with one idea, and he says, well, you know everyone in the business. Why don't you put together a compilation of, and I said, yeah, I know the best and the brightest in the field. That would be easy. I just called up my friends, because if you go to enough conferences, you go to lunch and dinner, you hang out, and you get to know people. And these were all people I highly respected in the field. And I mean, I knew John Mack even when he had died in around 2003, but I knew of his work and his archives, and I knew there was a talk he had given that was never published in print in book form. And so I asked his archivist about that. So I wanted, in the wake of the disclosure that the government is saying, I think no one, including the government, knows what's really going on. The government may know more than we do, but they're looking at just the nuts and bolts aspect. And when I go to these conferences, I see there's overlapping areas of agreement, but there's also people have their own view of what contact is, and everyone has their own take on it. And it's like the parts of the elephant, you know, none of them have all the pieces. I mean, have their little piece. So I thought the best way to prepare a public that is not getting answers from the government, because they keep saying, oh, there's something, we don't know what it is, but maybe they don't know what it is. But I wanted to put together a compilation from many perspectives, so the reader could get a sense of what it might be for them. So it's like a mosaic. You can't see the whole picture up front, but when you step back and put all these basically 12 different people's views together, you might start to get an idea of what's going on. You know, one common theme in all the chapters is this use of telepathy, you know, and this pretty much evolution of a way of thinking that's not linear, it's not materialistic, there's something else. And even us, me and you, Sandie, are facing the ways of explaining non-material existence to material people, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, right. You know, the book, I mean, it's a really good book. It certainly gave me, answered a lot of questions for me. And I know that reviewers have labeled it the most comprehensive clarification to date on the intent and intelligence behind the phenomena. So tell me, there's the book. Yeah. Okay. What your experts, what do they know about the intentions and the intelligence of these cosmic others?
That's a good question. And it's still sort of a little split about what the experts know and what I know. It seems like they're not here to invade. They are here in many cases. You talk to Whitley Strieber and Linda Moulton Howe, to take genetic information. I'm talking about one race of beings, because it's more than one race of beings. The ones I'm talking about, the little grays that are from, some people say, Zeta Reticuli, and they know that, or they think that because of a map that Betty Hill, one of the earliest abductees, made when she was taken aboard a ship, when she was abducted. And she asked this commander, oh, where are you guys from? And he showed her a map. And under hypnosis, she was able to redraw this map. And this astronomer named Marjorie Fisher put those points together on a star map and said, oh, they must be from Zeta Reticuli. And the whole story of like little grays from Zeta Reticuli developed. That may or may not be true. We don't know at this point if that is true. We don't know if anything's true, because one thing that a lot of people agree on is there's a trickster aspect to the phenomena. There's a manipulation of consciousness. They want people to see. I mean, two people could be looking at the same little piece of sky. One person will see a UFO, the other person won't see anything. They'll say, what are you talking about? And so what I'm trying to do is figure out what is the consistent, I'm doing that in my next book as well. What is the consistent themes of the phenomenon? What do we know? They're trying to influence consciousness somehow. They're trying to expand our areas of perception. They're trying to make us think a little more abstractly. So you notice in the title of my book, there's an asterisk, and I wanted that to be part of the title because there's something about the way they communicate, which is more symbolic than linear words. So the asterisk means little star, that's the asterisk. So putting it between making and contact was really, I think, the title of the book, Beyond the Words. What is a star? What is it? And what do we make of it? And when we start to think more abstractly, I think we're more on the level of how these beings communicate telepathically, not in words, but in ideas, within downloads that we then put into words. I mean, for the most part, I don't even know if ETs speak a verbal language because everything is telepathic. And I would say 10 out of the 11 people and chapters in here talk about the level of telepathy in there. Only Nick Pope, who's a very kind of materialistic nuts and bolts guy, doesn't mention the telepathic level because he says he's the villain in the book. He's saying this is not about consciousness. This is about nuts and bolts. And that only get you so far because we sense this consciousness influence, which is another reason the government doesn't know how to explain it. They don't even know how to talk about what consciousness is. They're just looking at how to make weapons. And this is not about weapons. UFOs have shut down nuclear missile silos in the US and in Russia. So there's this, so what was the question? I think I got off the point.
Well, it was really about what all of your contributors know about the intelligence here. I think there's still some unanswered questions, like people talk about maybe one particular faction of ETs that don't come from outer space but actually live in the ground, coming out of lakes and rivers and things. Other people talk about the archons that have always been here. So we don't really know. And I would imagine that they're far ahead of us, and they're only going to communicate what they want us to know and what they feel we're ready to know.
Right. You're right about that. And I think they're also pushing us a little bit to the edge of that knowing. So there's a little evolution in that. But one common theme is a genetic aspect. It seems like they are taking eggs and sperm to create a hybrid race. And there's evidence that these hybrid beings, I know it sounds fantastic, are here, I don't think to take over, but to go to their own planet with some of the human knowledge, because the grays, the beings from Zeta Reticuli, it appears had reached the end of their evolutionary cycle. They became purely mental and forgot what humans have mostly is emotion and passion. That's one of our strong points. And that is what this particular race of beings had bred out of their genetics because they were looking for higher intelligence. And so, yeah.
Have you looked at Judy Carroll's work?
No, who's that?
Judy Carroll is an Australian lady who I'm interviewing later today. And Judy says that she is a hybrid, that she has full remembrance of Zeta. And she's written a book about ET presence on Earth, the history. And she talks about how often her people try to come here to intervene, especially after, the Hiroshima. And she said that there's a misunderstanding about the Zetas. Many people say that the Greys are the evil ones, and she says they're not. But she said after being, stopped so many times from coming here, a lot of them are now coming in the traditional way. So they are being born rather than, coming en masse in some kind of spaceship. And that is the way that they feel they can best inform humanity.
Yeah, that's the starseed theory. Mary Rodwell, who writes a chapter, she's also Australian, is a big promoter of the starseed. But getting back to this old notion of hybrids, we actually, human beings are hybrids.
Yes.
We, I think, and other people have kind of said this, Linda Moulton Howe, particularly in the book, says the emerging primates were genetically manipulated by other beings to have higher intelligence, more evolved understanding, more conceptual ways of expressing ourselves. So we are a combination of 22 different alien races that have come into. That's one theory. Some people say the Anunnaki, some people, but we are different than all the other animals on the planet. Look, we wear clothes, we put pictures on the walls, we have rituals. I mean, there's not even the most evolved primates can do what we do. And even if they change our genetics by a little 1%, that's enough to activate this human dimension that makes us so different. So I say we are the aliens, we are the hybrids. And this next level of hybridization may be to take us to another place, but we also have to realize that we're a combination of the higher and the lower, and we have to start to function from our higher level, from the alien or the God or the divine level, which is inbred in our genetics. If we just get over this tribal warfare sort of way of existing that's been going on for 10, 20,000 years. And when we activate our divine potential, we can meet these other beings on an even playing field. And that's one of the basic messages of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes across very strongly. Amit Goswami, he has raised some interesting questions like, are we dealing with extraterrestrial beings or beings of a different non-material order? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a whole range. There's something called the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, where these little gray or green beings are coming to the planet. And then Jacques Vallée, who was one of the founders in the field, said, no, if there's just visitors from another planet coming to visit, I'd be very disappointed. There's some interdimensional quality. They may be physical. I think there's a physical quality, but maybe not this dimension of physics, this 3D dimension. So I think these beings are coming through some inner space, inter-vibrational way of showing up, what they call the interdimensional theory, IPH. And so that seems more likely because even the government, they've changed the names from flying saucer to UFOs to UAP. From UAP was unidentified aerial phenomena. Now they're calling unidentified anomalous phenomena. And there was a bill in the Senate by Chuck Schumer identifying anomalous phenomena. And they say doesn't just travel through air or water, it travels interdimensionally. There was some feature in the bill that alluded, they may not have said interdimensionally, but they said, well, it doesn't always travel in air, sea, land. There might be some other factors. So there is seeping into the general understanding this thing about dimensions, and it's also being followed up in quantum physics. There's dimensional realities, hyperspace. I mean, black holes, wormholes. There's this now more current understanding, and that may coincide with this other way of looking at these beings, which I think are physical. There's crafts are physical. They found pieces of craft. These beings are physical, but they may come in and out of our dimensional space and able to shift their vibrational rate. I mean, we're only seeing what's here because we're vibrating at the same rate, but these beings are very much in control of their vibrational level, can pop in and out of our reality. They can levitate. They can move their ships from here across time and space. And that's something we don't understand. And we have to shift how we understand the nature of time, space, and reality if we're going to meet them on an even playing field. And we're very stuck in a materialistic worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. One of your contributors talks about extra celestials and ultra as well. And I think there's a description, the extra celestials, that they're almost amorphous. It almost gave me the sense that they were talking about what we would describe as angels.
Yes, it's J.J. Hurtak, J.J. and
Yes.
Desiree
Yes.
Hurtak, and they're good friends of mine. They have a greater cosmology that includes, yes, there's hardcore ETs, because obviously, life is abundant throughout the cosmos. I mean, I think life is an emergent property of creation itself. It's not what Darwinian theories claim, that it's an accident. It's no accident. So there are categories of beings, and the ultra celestials are not just higher vibration, they're higher consciousness that can show up as angels or glowing beings of light, light beings. Maybe that's what they were. And they do have a way of wanting to help humanity. So there's levels of assistance, and maybe the little grays are just after our genetic information, and these higher ones are here to evolve us spiritually, to kind of take us away from this ego-based way of thinking. Our brain is so full of potential. I teach remote viewing. Maybe we should do a show about that sometimes, where
I would love to.
Where in the classes, I say, okay, I'm looking at a picture of a target, or a friend of mine is at a certain location. I give them the name of the friend, and they tune into that location. So they're able to shift we're able to shift, everyone can do this, shift our consciousness from local to non-local. This is going beyond the five senses. We have senses that are connected to what's called the quantum field by Joe Dispenza or other people. So we are connected to the quantum field. We are part of the infinity of all time and all space. I mean, that's the only way I can explain remote viewing, which has been proven. It's been used by the CIA. It was developed at the Stanford Research Institute to spy on the Russians, because the CIA said, well, the Russians have a psychic spying program. We need to have, and now it's been used by so many different agencies as an asset in understanding what other countries are doing. But everyone can do that. Everyone can play the piano too. It's just some people can do it better than others. But I teach it because our right brain is connected beyond time and space. I'm convinced of that. And the left brain's very linear. So we're just taught to develop, a very linear aspect, a very linear notion of reality. By the time we're 5, we're brought to school and taught ABC 1, 2, 3. We're taught in very segment. So this whole other way of perceiving, which is one of the things John Mack says. He says, if we're going to understand this, we need other ways of knowing.
Yes.
So the other ways of knowing is this right brain awareness of non-local consciousness.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching remote viewing to actually go to other planets. We go, once you learn the basics and we get in agreement in the class, if we all go off planet, this is where it really gets exciting, and we all see the same sort of beings, then maybe, and we don't have proof that that's a reality. And it's been really fun to do that with like 10 people traveling together in a group consciousness to visit other planetary civilizations. And sometimes these beings are aware that we're there. It's
being watched. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
We're going to take a short break now, Alan, but this is absolutely fascinating, and I want to join that class.
Okay.
You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is author, filmmaker, lecturer, event producer, interviewer, and dedicated consciousness explorer, Alan Steinfeld, who is the founder, host, and producer of the award-winning New Reality TV and YouTube series. And we're discussing his latest book, Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence. We'll hear more from Alan after the break. Don't go away.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcast and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Alan Steinfeld. Daryl Anker is one of your contributors, and he's internationally known for his communication with the ET Bashar. What does Bashar have to say about all of this as one of the probably only non-corporeal beings in the book?
Yes, I know Bashar very well. I've been following him. He calls himself a first contact specialist. And they are slowly acclimatizing human consciousness to their consciousness. That's one of the things I also mentioned in the book. We have to go to their level. We're not going to come down to our level of violence and destruction. And it's like talking to your dog, right? You're not going to bark at your dog if you want to communicate. You're going to speak in the higher level. So they are trying to shift our perceptions of what's possible in more abstract ways of thinking. This is how I understand it. More it's as if consciousness is an application. You know, I talked to Deepak Chopra. I know it's getting a little away from your question. He says it's all consciousness. I say, Deepak, what's the application of consciousness? How do we apply this thing we're calling consciousness? Of course, it's all consciousness, but let's use consciousness and remote viewing to do things, to make contact. And this is sort of what Bashar, I feel, is trying to show us, the levels of reality that apply what this thing of awareness and perceptions, and as we shift perception and let go of an old way of thinking, we start to meet those beings on a first contact basis. One example, I just want to say one example that Daryl, who channels Bashar, says he wanted to see Bashar once, and he asked to see Bashar. Bashar showed up in a dream state, and as he got closer to this being called Bashar, he started to panic because everything he thought about himself, his whole ego identity started to dissolve. And that's something we are going to have to prepare for, that we have to let go of our past, our history, everything we think we are, if we're really going to meet them on an even playing field. And I think that's one of the reasons Bashar is here, to help us make that transition.
Well, you know, I think humans are creative beings, and it doesn't make sense that, you know, where's the creativity in waging war? You know, the creativity is in exploration and expanding the mind. And what else can we do? And what else can we do? You would think that we would have learned that one by now.
Well, there's you know, human history is full of its polarities and there's some amazingly creative people. Look at all the beauty that's been around on the planet here, and look at all these. Sorry, this is my spaceship.
That's a nice kind of spaceship theme.
My spaceship calling me. So there's a lot of creativity in this. So if we can just raise the negative scope of what we're seeing here to something different, we can activate it. I think creativity is the key to expanding. I think we're here to be creative. I mean, William Blake says the imagination is the human being. So ultimately, my ultimate thesis is that the flowering of humanity is to devote ourselves to creative projects, to expand the scope of what consciousness is. That's why writing and speaking and art and music and dance are big aspects of our application of consciousness. This goes back to that whole idea that we have to apply consciousness into creating the unknown, making known the unknown. That's the key here. So
Grant Cameron, I mean, you know, along with many others, say that if someone sees a UFO, it's not an accident, it's not chance, this is very deliberate. And let's face it, I mean, you know, they're so far ahead of us. If they wanted to hide themselves, they could. They don't. So that's a big message in and of itself.
Right. And when you see a UFO and people are shocked to see it, even me, when I've seen them, it's like, oh my God, this is real. It's a shift in consciousness.
Yes.
And somehow, even though these craft are way up there, they're able to know that we're looking at them. I was looking through these night vision binoculars that amplify the light, and I saw this triangle in the sky. And when I was looking at it, it went from this point up to this point down. Just maybe it was a coincidence, who knows? But it was so odd that, and I've had other experiences where I had thought something and then I see it, and their application of consciousnesses, which is my point, is very sophisticated. They enter our dreams and all that. So they're very much aware of our limited ways of being. And I think part of their mission is start to expand our facility to think and be aware and be consciousness, which ties into a lot of spiritual principles. So it's like that.
Mary Rodwell, obviously, you know, her essay is called Awakening to Our Cosmic Heritage, and she's done a lot of work with the children And she says that there is a wide population of children who are more mature, have more wisdom beyond their years, and are known for their telepathic abilities and spiritual insights. And, I know people who work with children like that. A lot of the autistic population, the nonverbals, actually, very much like this. So, in a way, it's already happening. We are awakening to our cosmic heritage. We are becoming more cosmic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a slow process because there's this old guard, like you're saying, that still wants to make war for whatever reason, and we're moving into a new time. We're moving into the Aquarian age, Pluto and Aquarius. Something is shifting right now, and we're seeing the higher values, and we've incarnated to be these great beings that give back to each other and to form a collective awareness while keeping our individual contributions. So this is our future, and these beings that Mary Rod will talk about and interview are helping to lead the way in new ways of thinking about reality and time and space, and helping us contribute our most essential efforts into uplifting humanity. This is really why these beings are here. They're not here to invade our world. That's an old colonial idea from European invasions, starting with the English and Spanish and all those people that wanted to just conquer the world. They don't need to. We're part of a collective consciousness, right? And, the last part of my book, I quote Bruce Lipton. Do you know who Bruce Lipton is?
Oh, yes, of course.
And he says, somewhere in here, he says, we are not humans until we create humanity. That's when we all work together in a coherent fashion to form this super organism of humanity. All our consciousnesses are connected. We're each individuals, but when we come together, he says we form a synergy of awareness, which makes this super organism. And our job is to come together as a oneness to meet other onenesses of consciousness to form the next level of evolution. This is the purpose of making contact, I feel, one of them. Yeah. To know we're a singularity of thought, not transhuman, but thought. And we're all connected to each other. You know that, Sandie. And we're connected to these beings, but it's slowly dawning on us that we're part of a cosmic collective soul, let's call it.
So back to that question, how can we prepare for an event that is literally beyond anything humanity's ever faced? I mean, there's nothing like experience to convince people. Reading is one thing, and there are wonderful books out there, and I highly recommend yours because it gives a fabulous overview. But what would you recommend for people who say, okay, I want to prepare myself. What can I do that might possibly give me some kind of experience so that I know this is real and I can move forward with that?
Well, the reason I wrote the book was preparing. First step is to be aware that such a thing exists, right? If someone shows up at your door, let's say, just a person, and knocks on your door and you're not prepared, it's a little bit of a jolt if you're not expecting somebody. And we're not expecting these beings because we're not prepared. So the book is saying, well, they're here. Wait for that knock on your door. So how to prepare for that is to know, first of all, that reality is not what you think it is. It's much more fluid. It's much more, as I'm sure you know, energy-based than matter-based. And these beings are showing up as more energy. Telepathy is a reality. Your mind can perceive other thoughts. Thoughts are things, and sometimes people get these beings appearing in their dreams. I've had dreams that I know weren't dreaming. Dreams fade like, footprints on the beach. But when you have an ET dream, I still remember my ET dreams where I was given this little creature to put in my hands, and I said, or I've been on board a ship, these are dream-like, but maybe they're not dreams, and these beings interface because they're manipulators and using consciousness as an application. They could come in and out of our dream life. I mean, how that happens, because dreams seem so private, how do these beings enter our dream field? Well, we have yet to understand that, but yet it happens, and there's lots of testimony that does happen, and people, hundreds of thousands of people can. So preparing is to know that reality is much more fluid, and to let's see, I say kind of not disorientate yourself, but look into, like, see yourself falling asleep, practice altered states, practice lucid awareness in your dreams. That's one way to definitely prepare. Go to certain vortex sites, like I'm in Sedona now, where the energy is very different, and do hands-on healing. Know that energy is coming in, and see yourself more as an energy being. Yes, honor the physical, feed it, nourish it, but what's the thing that's activating the physical is the energy in it. So look at higher spiritual traditions. Be open. Don't be closed-minded. Don't be so attached to identifying yourself as a Republican or Democrat or whatever people identify you. Be more fluid in your whole concept of yourself, and be prepared. Expect the unexpected is one of my favorite sayings by Heraclitus, because it's hard and difficult to find, or it can be shocking. I'll tell you a really silly story, because I was home alone once. I was writing, and I hear a little rustling in, like, this part of my apartment, and suddenly I see these two black eyes staring at me, and I go, and it was like a little mouse that was looking at me. Did I tell that story before? But it was this little creature, but it wasn't that. It was the sentience. It was like this creature was looking at me, I was looking at it. It was like, for a second, it was a shock, because I didn't expect it, and this was just a mouse. So imagine a super conscious being appearing and looking at you and knowing everything about you. You can prepare yourself for that by knowing that we're basically an open book, and there's nothing to hide, and that we are really super consciousness itself, and we're capable of mind expanding, not through drugs, but through intention, to realms beyond this existence. We can travel, where we do travel, the Aborigines, every night in our dreams, to another dimension of reality. I mean, sometimes back to a place that seems very, very familiar. How do we explain that? So practice awareness, lucid, be creative. I think the creative applications help us open up to other realities of thought. Practice lucid awareness, practice non-local possibilities. When your phone rings, don't see the message who's calling, say, okay, I'm going to tune in. So we're evolving collectively to take in these greater, we have much more senses than our 5 senses. When I do remote viewing, I talk about, can you feel the ceiling above your head? Can you feel that? Can you feel when someone's looking at you? Rupert Sheldrake did a great series of experiments. When people are looking at you, 90% of the people are aware when someone else is looking at the back of your head. You just feel it. Yeah. So by tuning into these other senses of awareness, we start to meet these beings on their level of activity. And that's one way to prepare to go beyond the limited mechanistic ways of thinking we are humans.
So you've been in this field for over 30 years. We know from, that since the war, more or less, we've been having visitations, probably, long before that. But do you think that we are getting any closer to having actual confirmation, not just disclosure, but actual confirmation, official confirmation?
Well, one of the reasons I think the information's coming out inside government, we have this guy, David Grush, an intelligence officer, said, yes, we have bodies, we have craft. There's many more sightings. People are having personal experiences. It's more in the news. This is all part of a collective way of getting closer to the reality. And I think as far as the government, the ETs said to people who are in contact inside government, either you tell them or we tell them. So we're getting much closer. The vibration of the planet is shifting. If you like astrology, the whole idea of Pluto in Aquarius, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is about way out stuff, and UFOs, and the Pluto aspect that reveals the shadow. So the shadow parts of awareness are bringing forth new knowledge. And I think part of the ET plan, if you want to call it that, is slow increments of knowledge where they appear, they disappear, we digest it, even personally or collectively, and then we say, oh yeah, okay, I'm ready for more. Now we're at a huge leap in awareness where we're ready for the big enchilada. I think we're ready. I mean, they've already, their Phoenix lights appeared to 100,000 people in Phoenix in 1997. There have been these group sightings, but as we start to accept the fact that obviously we're not alone in the universe, the Webb telescope, I think, is making discoveries that we have yet to be aware of, and they've been top secret information, what they've seen on TRAPPIST-1, so this, and when it shows up, it's like, oh yeah, we're not alone in the universe. What's the big deal? Why has that been a big secret? We knew the earth wasn't flat, at least most of us do, and we knew it wasn't the center of the universe. So the third big paradigm shifter is to say, well, life is abundant throughout creation, conscious life. And so how to explain that? Let's just have the revelations. Let's demand from Congress, US government, that at least to roll out the bodies, tell us what you know, and let's put this together as a world population. And we have to demand this from our congressional leaders who are questioning the Pentagon and saying, no, we can't tell you that. So there's an infight. I'm going to be lecturing about this, a constitutional issue of why the military industrial complex are not telling even the president and members of the Congress what's going on. And that's a real legal issue. And that's going to come up more and more. So we're getting closer to not just disclosure, but yes, confirmation, where we will maybe see these beings, their bodies, or maybe they will land, and or in mass landing. But people are still a little afraid of that, and there's no reason to. And we're still afraid of someone else if they look different, if their skin colors are different, if their religion. So we can prepare by getting over our innate prejudice, which has stopped us and created wars and all that, and to say, well, life will show up in different forms, and it will be different than us. It will think different than us. So get used to it, because the gifts that those civilizations have to offer in terms of free energy, biology, sciences, technologies, is so much greater than the fear of the other, which is holding us back. So it's time to embrace the other as a positive aspect of what's available within the consciousness field of the universe. So
yeah. Stop spending all this money on weapons, and start putting it into something that's going to benefit the future of humanity. Very quickly, last question, and it's got to be a very short answer. And it's the $65,000 question that's raised by Mary Rodwell. What will humanity look like when we realize that we really are part of a larger cosmos?
That is the great awakening of humanity. That is when we stop being enslaved to greedy corporations where energy is abundant, where we can then be the reason we incarnate, to be the creative inventors, discoverers of new possibilities, where everyone has a chance to create, to contribute to their artistic input and expand the feelings and emotional capacities of the human being. Humanity will be at a place of a paradise. Imagine John Lennon said that. And that's possible. I know it's possible. And my favorite quote by H.G. Wells says, someday someone will pick up an old newspaper and think, was there ever such a world?
Alan Steinfeld, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Making Contact, Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence is published by St. Martin's, and it features the best and the brightest researchers in the fields of UFO with previously unpublished essays by all of the people that you've heard so much about. And you can find out more about Alan, watch his interviews with leading New Thought thinkers on his New Realities YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com/new realities. That's it for this week. This show is also available as a podcast on the Om Times website, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, and all of the major podcast platforms. So you can download it and listen to it on the go. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. Thanks for joining me today. And I'll be back with another edition of What is Going On at the same time next week. Till then, goodbye from me, and thank you again to Alan Steinfeld.
Thank you, Sandie.